Hello, I'm Michael Vorse. Welcome to this Church Militant Special Report. Killing, rioting, looting, and burning have swept across large American cities, ostensibly in reaction to the death of George Floyd. Billed as protests for racial justice, many are marching under the Black Lives Matter banner, the movement seen as the righteous crusade for racial equality. It's even seen a dramatic uptick in popularity. A recent Rasmussen poll showing 62% of Americans have a favorable opinion of Black Lives Matter, compared to 32% 4 years ago. But given the glowing numbers of support, a question arises. Would BLM be seen so favorably if the truth about the group was known? Here's Christine Niles with more.
Black Lives Matter is a terrorist, Marxist, pro-LGBT, pro-abortion organization. Yet ordinary Americans, including Catholic clergy, are lining up behind it. The movement was founded in 2013 by three black feminists, Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tometi, in response to the shooting of Trayvon Martin. What began as a simple hashtag on Twitter has now exploded into a global movement. With 40 chapters in 4 countries, hundreds of thousands of supporters, and at least tens of millions of dollars in funding. While Black Lives Matter seems to be going mainstream, its agenda is far more radical than people know. Dr. Carol Swain, former professor of political science at Vanderbilt University, says the group has a much darker agenda.
They have, put forth an image, one image, but actually the things that they're doing is quite different. And I find it, very troubling that they have been mainstreamed. And, the chants, no justice, no peace, there will be no peace because it will never be enough. I went to their original website and it looked like it came from the Communist Manifesto. It had very little to do with Black people, and it was clearly Marxist, and it was about overthrowing the state, and it was as radical as Antifa.
BLM's founders have made clear their agenda is much larger than racial equality. In fact, it's just as much about homosexuality and transgenderism as it is about race.
My queerness, my blackness, my womanness shaped Black Lives Matter.
Co-founder Patrisse Cullors identifies as a lesbian, as does fellow co-founder Alicia Garza.
It is not a coincidence that this iteration of the Black freedom movement is led by queer folks. It's not a coincidence, but that doesn't mean that it's any less challenging.
Contrasting itself with the Black freedom movement of the civil rights era, a 2019 article titled "Hearing the Queer Roots of Black Lives Matter" highlights the unique flavor of BLM's activism. Quote, "BLM is inherently a movement sustained by a politics of blackness that is unapologetically feminist, womanist, and queer." Cullors, speaking on the legacy of queer Black women, told HuffPost, quote, "We have to look at queerness as a means towards challenging normativity." Garza is no less radical, saying of her movement, quote, "Black Lives Matter affirms the lives of Black, queer, and trans folks, disabled folks, Black undocumented folks, folks with records, women, and all Black lives along the gender spectrum." Her words are echoed in the BLM manifesto on its site. Quote, "As a network, we have always recognized the need to center the leadership of women and queer and trans people. And elsewhere, we foster a queer affirming network." Black Lives Matter is partnered with gay pride parades, supporters proudly marching in the LGBT rallies, homosexuals and transgenders comparing Black Lives Matter protests against police to the Stonewall riots of 1969. And BLM even lauded as Toronto's most effective LGBT movement. The article noting that the group there, like many other Black Lives Matter chapters, is organized mostly by queer and trans people. Black Lives Matter was given a place of honor at Toronto's 2016 Pride Parade and used that position to halt the parade for 30 minutes while it made public demands that parade organizers show more support for queer and trans Blacks.
We are demanding that we have space in Pride, that we are seen
Their public protest forced the executive director of the Pride Parade to sign their list of demands before the parade could resume. And this year, plans for LA's makeshift gay pride parade was organized by an all-gay board of All Black Lives Matter, endorsed by the LA chapter of BLM. But the LGBT agenda is not the only agenda item of Black Lives Matter. It's also, at its heart, Marxist.
This is a movement about economic justice. This is a movement about racial and gender justice. This is a movement to reimagine what our lives can and should look like.
From the BLM website, our network centers on those who've been marginalized within Black liberation movements. These Black liberation movements are founded in Black liberation theology, which itself finds its roots in neo-Marxist liberation theology, a corruption of the gospel that turns Christian teaching into a social gospel based on class warfare and economic justice. But in the case of Black liberation theology, the war is not so much between classes as between races, Black and white.
They've changed the meaning of what it is to be a white supremacist. At one time, it was a white person who thought they were superior to other racial and ethnic groups. Now it's any white person that is white, their whiteness, that is seen as part of their privilege, that is seen as something that makes them superior, and they're in the oppressor category, even if they were born and raised in Appalachia, parents never have attended college, they could be high school dropouts.
Comparisons have also been made between BLM and the Black Panther Party.
The whole black nation has to be put together as a black army.
A paramilitary organization founded in the 1960s in response to police brutality. It justified the use of violence to protect African Americans, and its leaders followed communist ideology. In fact, one of the most notorious members of the Black Panthers, Assata Shakur,
socialism is an integral part of building social justice on this planet,
serves as the ideological inspiration for Black Lives Matter. Both Garza and Colors admitting she's one of their heroes. A Marxist revolutionary and member of the Black Liberation Army, Shakur is on the FBI's most wanted terrorists list with a $2 million bounty on her head. She shot and killed a New Jersey state trooper in 1972. Convicted of 8 felonies, including murder, robbery, and assault, she managed to escape prison in 1979, fleeing to Cuba, where she lives to this day.
people have the right to free themselves.
This is a person that BLM holds up as a role model and inspiration, quoting her at all their events.
So this is how we close out every meeting, every event, every action, every freeway we've shut down, every mall we've shut down. You'll hear this chant reverberated. This is from our beloved Assata Shakur.
It is our duty to win!
It is our duty to win!
We must love and support one another!
We must love and support one another!
We have nothing to lose but our chains!
We have nothing to lose but our chains!
Ashe, Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
The Marxist site, Socialist Alternative, explains the agenda of Black Lives Matter. Quote, to go forward, this movement needs to connect racism, police brutality, and economic demands. And, true to its Marxist roots, BLM favors the breakup of the family in favor of community rule. Quote, we disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another. What's more, BLM is pro-abortion. In 2016, Black Lives Matter partnered with so-called reproductive justice groups to advance abortion rights, with co-founder Alicia Garza stating, quote, reproductive justice is very much situated within the Black Lives Matter movement, so we certainly understand that BLM and reproductive justice go hand in hand. Last year, Garza paired up with Cecile Richards, former CEO of Planned Parenthood.
I launched this with Alicia Garza, who was one of the original founders of Black Lives Matter.
To found the group Supermajority, which trains women in political activism, including abortion activism. Garza has written articles like this one in Marie Claire, titled, Can We Have a Conversation About Abortion Bans in the South? that slam abortion bans as disproportionately affecting Black women.
And you would think that an organization that named itself Black Lives Matter, that they would have a position on abortion. And the fact that Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist, she was someone that was very much open to genocide of certain people groups, you would think that the Black lives of the unborn would matter to this group, but no.
The group is backed and funded by leftists and Democratic operatives, pouring millions into the group's coffers. In November 2015, a closed-door meeting was held in Washington, D.C. at the Democracy Alliance Donor Club, where Democratic financial heavyweights pledged to fund the then burgeoning BLM. Democracy Alliance was founded by atheist billionaire George Soros and other leftist donors. The group closely aligned with the Democratic Party and whose members heavily contribute to Democrat candidates. Soros has given a total of $33 million to Black Lives Matter. Both the Ford Foundation and Borealis Philanthropy established the Black-led Movement Fund with the aim of raising $100 million for Black Lives Matter and other Black activist groups. BLM also gets help from Act Blue, a major funding arm for the Democratic Party. When you click on Black Lives Matter's donate page, it takes you to an Act Blue donations page. While Act Blue processes payments for Black Lives Matter, it also acts as a fundraising arm for the Democratic Party, demonstrating the shared connections. In fact, it sends hundreds of millions to Democratic candidates like Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, and others.
Black Lives Matter agenda, comes out of critical theory, and so the critical race theory, it's all about oppressors and victims. And they will not move away from that because it's profitable. They have raked in millions of dollars now coming from mainstream corporations and organizations.
In light of Black Lives Matter's clear Marxist, pro-LGBT, pro-abortion, anti-Catholic agenda, it's disturbing that Catholic clergy are supporting Black Lives Matter. Bishop Mark Seitz of El Paso, Texas, was lauded by leftist Catholics when he knelt with fellow clergy holding up Black Lives Matter signs.
How do you find Donald Trump? Guilty.
And dozens of Washington, D.C. priests and bishops joined a Black Lives Matter protest after Archbishop Wilton Gregory urged them to attend the Archdiocese's anti-racist rally, scheduling it for the same time and location as the BLM protest, in a deliberate attempt to mix clergy with protesters. Even Catholic bishops in the UK are backing the movement, issuing a statement supporting the BLM protests under the guise of Catholic teaching against racism.
What has happened with the church is the church has adopted the critical race theory and the critical theory, and so the world is teaching the church instead of the church instructing the world on how to deal with these issues.
The Catholic Church has a long history of condemning mistreatment of our fellow men, whether for race, sex, disability, or any other reason. And Catholic leaders should always loudly condemn injustice. But considering Black Lives Matter's deeply anti-Catholic agenda, our leaders simply cannot make common cause with this movement. Those who do cast serious doubt on their true intentions, and critics have every right to ask, what are your true motives here? Are you truly invested in promoting Catholic teaching? Or do you, like Black Lives Matter, in fact want revolution? Christine Niles, Church Militant, Detroit.